This is a Ferrari 488 GTB, and in today's video, I kind of want to give this poor thing a bit of recognition because I feel like it's been forgotten. Everybody's always raving about its older brother, the 458, because it's the last naturally aspirated mid-engine Ferrari, or the Pista because it's insane, or the F8 Tributo because it's the last mid-engine V8 Ferrari we'll probably ever see. And more recently, everyone's talking about the 296 GTB because it's the new kid on the block. But what about the 488? It's kind of been forgotten, faded off into the background, like the one son that does YouTube videos for a living in a family full of engineers. Not that I'd know anything about how that would feel. So what exactly is the 488? Well, in 2015, this car came on sale and it replaced the 458 Italia, which was a hugely successful car. And just by taking a look at the 488, it's very easy to see how much of the styling was inspired by the 458, which I have no problem with because I think the 458 is a beautiful car. But I do appreciate the slightly more mature look that the 488 takes. One thing that I love about this car is that they incorporated the exhaust coming out of the rear bumper. Now, Ferrari's done that on the F430 Scuderia. They've done it on the 458 Speciale. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they ever did that on a, I guess you could call it, regular mainstream production Ferrari. So love seeing that on cars. I know Lamborghini's doing that with the Huracan Evo. Maserati does that with the MC20. It's a really cool design and I always love it. So let's talk about the engine. It has a 3.9 liter twin turbocharged V8. It makes 661 brake horsepower and 561 pound-feet of torque. That drives the rear wheels only via a 7-speed double clutch automatic gearbox, and that does 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. That is insanely fast. Now, the key there was that it's turbocharged. So the 458 and the F430, they were naturally aspirated V8s, and so were all of the other mid-engine Ferraris before, right? Well, not exactly. Because back in the 1970s, I believe it was 1975, Ferrari made what's called the 208 GTB, and that was mid-engined and that was turbocharged. So this isn't the first, but maybe we could say that it's the most iconic, right? It's the most important. Well, that would be kind of a tough sell too, because back in the 80s, Ferrari made the F40, which was also turbocharged, mid-engined, and a V8. So what is it then? It wasn't the first, it wasn't the most iconic, so maybe it's just doomed to live in the shadow of other cars for all time. But I don't think that it should. The F40 was a brilliant supercar, dare I say hypercar, but the thing is, even within the Ferrari brand, it wasn't really attainable. It wasn't a car that anybody was supposed to be able to buy. With the 488, when it was released, it was a properly fast car. It's still a ridiculously fast car by today's standards, and it was made in such a way that if you were able to join into the Ferrari brand, you would be able to get a 488. So what this car did was show the world what Ferrari could do with turbocharged technology. I mean, the last mid-engined V8 Ferrari with turbochargers was the F40, and that was over 30 years ago. So Ferrari was due for another go. Now, this car was so named to pay homage to the 208 GTB, GTB standing for Gran Turismo Berlinetta. The 488 in the name references the displacement of the V8, 487.7 cubic centimeters. And when you add in those two turbochargers, what you end up with is the roadmap to the future of mid-engined Ferrari supercars. Naturally aspirated large displacement engines are amazing. Nobody is arguing against that. But the reality is these brands have to follow a set of rules and restrictions. And as time goes on, those restrictions, specifically around emissions, become more strict, more stringent. The answer to that is turbochargers, because what turbocharging an engine does is multifold. It improves the power output of the engine first off. You get better low-end torque, low-end grunt, and the efficiency of the engine is improved as well. So you can have a lower displacement engine that produces more power. So theoretically, there's not really a reason not to do it. But in the supercar world, there kind of is. There's a few reasons why people don't like turbocharged engines, and it has to do with the nature of how turbos work. See, turbos need to be able to spool up. They need to collect air, build up that pressure, shoot that into the combustion chamber so you have more power. But that takes time. And in that time, you don't have access to the full capabilities of your powertrain. That's called turbo lag. And in a supercar, that's the last thing you want. You want access to your power whenever you want. So that's problem number one, and we'll get to how Ferrari addressed that in a second. Problem number two is a bit more juvenile, and that has to do with the sound. See, turbocharging a car means that you can have a lower displacement, as I said, which is better for efficiency, makes trees happy, all that's great. But what it also does is affect the sound quality of the car. And when you buy a supercar, you want it to be loud. You want your ears to bleed every time you turn it on. And with a turbocharger, it kind of muzzles the noise a little bit. Now, to address some of these issues, Ferrari has done some proper engineering. On the subject of turbo lag, they installed compact twin scroll turbochargers. And what that means is that they spool up much faster, eliminating much of, if not all of the turbo lag. So you get a much more immediate throttle response. It even has a computer system that as you go up in gears, it will increase the amount of torque produced by the engine. Now, what that means basically in English is that the faster you go, the more powerful the car will feel. So what they've done with this car is they haven't ruined Ferrari by any means by adding all of this technology. They've just changed the way that the car is experienced. It's not a worse Ferrari, it's just a different Ferrari. So yeah, the 488 Pista is amazing, and it's true, the F8 Tributo might be the last V8 that we see, but the 488 GTB started this new era of Ferrari. It showed us what they could do in a production car with turbochargers. And for that reason, I feel like it really is truly a special car. And on the subject of sound, you really can't ignore it. The reality is that the predecessor to this car, the 458, it sounds better. And I know that you're gonna say, oh, that's subjective. It's not. The sound on this car is improved by things like the flat plane crankshaft and a reworked exhaust system. So it doesn't sound bad by any means, but if you're comparing it to a naturally aspirated engine, it might not be able to hold much of a candle. But when you listen to this car as a standalone thing, if you just listen to it for what it can produce, it sounds pretty good. Just have a listen. On today's market, these cars are selling in the 200,000 range, mid to high level, I would say. And that's a lot of money, but for the performance, it's kind of pennies, really. With the 296 GTB coming, actually it's pretty much already here, the F8 Tributo is on its way out, we could be seeing the end of mid-engine V8 Ferraris, at least in the larger production scale like you have on these and the 458s. So I don't think they're going to be sitting at that price point for very long. The point of today's video wasn't to say that this car is better than all of those other Ferraris that I've mentioned. It's to say that it's special in its own way, right? The 488, the F8, the 296, they've all got their attributes that make them stand out in the Ferrari lineup. All I'm saying is, I think the 488 was what started this new era of supercars with Ferrari. Its turbo technology was revolutionary. The performance is undeniable. And I feel like that's what makes it special. This is the car that really started the next generation of Ferrari supercars, and you gotta appreciate it for that. That's all I have for today's video. I wanna say a huge thank you to Maserati, Alfa Romeo, and Anaheim Hills for loaning me this 488. The car's actually on sale, so I will leave links in the description below to their website, their social media, and the posting for this car if it's still available when you watch this video. They've got a great inventory of cars. You definitely wanna check them out, actually. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention it, but they have some pretty interesting things in inventory right now, so definitely check out those links. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Leave me a comment below with your thoughts on this car, on the video. If you have one, share a bit of a story about why you got it, how has it been owning it. I always like reading those and responding when I can. And then like and subscribe, of course, is a great way to support the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.